let's bring in our next guest, Daniel Lazare. Another guest that I've always appreciated, Daniel Lazare. He is independent journalist and author, best known as a critic of the U.S. Constitution, American politics, government, and social policy in general. He's written several books, including The Frozen Republic and America's Undeclared War. Daniel, you are the person I wanted to talk to today. How are you doing this morning? You doing all right?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing fine. A little weirded out by some of the choices that are being made by Trump in regards to his team that's around him. Let's start at the beginning. I've been asking everybody the same question on this, and I'm curious about yours, especially about yours. Well, give me your take on this election, and give me your take also on this notion of why would the American public choose Trump? And I'm asking this, wanted to overthrow the government. He's been prosecuted, or at the very least had 90 indictments hanging over his head. He got prosecuted in what I consider to be a bogus trial in New York, but still got prosecuted in that trial. Nearly shot once, meaning there were 2 assassination attempts on his life. And all things being equal, you get the Democratic Party with a certain amount of hysteria, calling him a Nazi, a fascist, calling these people garbage. I mean, like the level of hysteria that basically took place. And yet he was able to increase his vote share by 1 million votes. Whereas Kamala Harris got like 70 million, 71 million, which is 10 million less than what Joe Biden was able to pull in. How did the Democratic Party collapse? How did Trump win this race? And what does it say about American politics that Trump wins?
Well, it says that American politics are, first of all, totally dysfunctional. Many Americans, if not most, were totally disgusted with the lineup that they were presented with November 5th. So this is kind of a protest vote, but the voters were disgusted with the Biden administration, with his inflationary policies, his pro-war policies, his policies of essentially favoring the rich, even though he denied it. And they were fed up.
Bernie Sanders, I'm sorry to interrupt. Bernie Sanders said he's the most progressive president since FDR. That's what Bernie Sanders said.
And then Sanders turned around and denounced the Democrats for being too favorable to the rich. So which is it? Are they favorable? Are they progressive? Or are they elitist? Sanders sends out a very mixed message. So we don't really know what he thinks. But anyway, I think the people were disgusted with that. They were fed up. They voted for Trump as a protest candidate, and Trump won. The fact that the choices were the only choices Americans were given were Kamala Harris versus Trump is astounding. It just shows how the political system has collapsed, how it's increasingly undemocratic, unrepresentative, and dysfunctional. But in any case, now Trump has clearly hit the ground running. He is putting together the most far-right cabinet in U.S. history. They are some really extraordinary people. For example,
if you want, Mike Waltz.
Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, is so right-wing that he actually calls for the construction of a third temple in Jerusalem on the Wailing Wall site. And I don't know if you know what the significance of.
I've been there.
Yeah, but this would essentially be a declaration of war on Islam, because it would essentially wipe out one of Islam's three holiest places, and would bring back a temple that has not existed for nearly 2,000 years, complete with a Jewish priesthood, Jewish sacrifices. It's just absolutely spooky. And this guy is in charge of the Defense Department. It's extraordinary.
Well, here's him. He's on Fox. This is him on Fox. Just to give a taste, there are plenty of these clips of him saying stuff like this. Well, I'm going to play it.
What's at stake?
What's at stake is repelling an authoritarian who basically is saying, I want the Soviet Union back, I want Ukraine back, I want Kiev back. And then what's at stake is making sure we don't allow it to become an Article 5 larger, broader war than that. So equipping and supplying Ukraine with what it needs faster than we have, and we haven't been doing it. The Biden administration has not been doing it fast enough so that they can further bog Putin down and push him back. It's going to be long, it's going to be bloody, but I think those are the stakes for the United
States. And for Donald Trump.
That was the old Hegstreth. The new Hegstreth is anti-Zelensky, anti-Kiev, and wants a negotiated settlement that will undoubtedly be unfavorable to the Ukraine. But that's what his boss wants, and that's what Hegstreth wants too.
Well, see, that's the rub, right? Like, is this a situation where Trump is bringing these people in, and these people are going to have to, like, because I always look at it as people of policy. And so if you're putting a neocon in a certain position, I'm assuming that you like that neocon's point of view and you want him to affect policy in the way that he's thinking about it. But that's not the way that guy was thinking. As you pointed out, the new version of himself is like, yeah, we need to get rid of this war. So is this what we may expect from all of these positions? Like, even if he gets a Rubio in, that on certain issues, they are bending to the will of the president. Whereas on the other issues, they bend to the will of the president. So, for example, you may have somebody who's a hawk on Israel and yet a moderate on Russia. Is that what we're looking at? Where these people are effectively, regardless of what their original positions is, regardless of what we heard them say on TV and everything else, they bend to the will of the president. Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I think Trump is a strong leader, and so I think that everyone he's bringing on board will do his bidding first and foremost, either his bidding or Elon Musk's or Don Jr.'s. But in any case, so I think that Hegstreth will carry out the Trump line vis-a-vis the Ukraine, and he's way out there in terms of the ultra right, in terms of his Israel policy, way out there. I mean, he essentially is towing the line of people like Smotrich and Ben Gvir.
That's right.
The outright fascist wing of the Netanyahu government. And I think fascist is not too strong a term for those two guys. I'm not one of these people who flings around the F word at every opportunity. I think it should be used very carefully and very precisely. But I think it really does apply to Smotrich and Ben Gvir. And I think Hegstreth essentially is, echoing their point of view.
But see, everybody that Donald Trump is bringing in his administration is effectively the same way on this issue. Like Miriam Adelson has given Trump $100 million. And it seems that money was spent very well, because it seems like he is falling in line with the Israeli first policy. That is very disconcerting to me. So, yeah, I agree with you on this. And Smotrich.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say he's talking about annexing the West Bank at this point.
Yeah.
The U.S. government is supposed to be an instrument. At least the way I look at it, it's like a tool. It's like a hammer. And in this case, the goal is to organize the productive powers of a society in a certain direction that is beneficial to the public, with the elections being that kind of the capability of changing the tool in order to fit the new times that we're in. It doesn't seem to work at this point. And it used to work. Like there was a time where the governmental apparatus did what it was supposed to do. Maybe not perfect, because, it's a leaky bucket. I can't think of the last leader that went to the mat for the American public and that I believe fought for the American interests, with the exception of maybe Sanders, but he was too weak to kind of pull that off. What happened? I'm super curious about that. You followed this, you've written books on this. What is it that we have lost that has disallowed the government to actually produce legitimate, real, tangible outcomes to the benefit of the American public. We seem to have lost something in this.
Well, I don't really buy that theory of losing something or some long lost golden age. I mean, you go back to Franklin D. Roosevelt. I mean, the great liberal hero, right? Franklin Roosevelt presided over a period of absolutely unrestrained racial terror in the South. He wouldn't even pass an anti-lynching bill, a bill that would make it a crime to engage in lynchings. Do you know that lynchings in the Deep South used to be advertised ahead of time? You know, they would actually say, tomorrow there will be a lynching, and the local sheriff, who was usually elected, would essentially open the jail door and say, come on in, boys. Here's your man. Take him out. And then there would be a public torture. Like no other country in the world actually had this, a public torture. And FDR failed to oppose that because he was beholden to his Dixiecrat wing. And JFK, another sterling liberal. I mean, not only did he start the war in Vietnam, but he was also very cool, very leery of the civil rights movement when it was actually at its height, at its most heroic stage. He really adopted a hands-off policy. Yeah. Very cool. So I'm not really sure when this golden age took place.
Exit. Okay,
but I certainly agree that the system now is completely corrupt. People have lost sight of any kind of rationale for governance, and we have a guy named Trump who's now, going to enter the White House in a couple of months, 3 months, and he is essentially pursuing a far right agenda. So America will see a carnival of reaction in a few months' time. It's going to be extraordinary. That's what all the information we've gotten so far indicates. I'm not engaging in wild speculation. I'm simply basing myself on the facts as we have them, and that's what they indicate.
Well, I agree with you. There was no golden age. Fair enough. Like there's never this thing to go back to per se. But I would say that during that racist time period, this kind of fascist time period in American history, that went on for decades, centuries even. So, we could put it on FDR, but that went well before FDR and well after FDR. But the government, in the context of the society, worked. Meaning it didn't work for everybody because African Americans were second-class citizens. But from the standpoint of white folks, it was doing the job it was supposed to do adequately. That's not true today. Like the influence that people have on our politics seems to be little to none. And the rich, for the most part, the side with the most cash is the side. 90% of the races are won by the side with the most cash. And so you can see that they cater to money. Even the Democratic Party, that is supposed to be the party that deals with healthcare, insurance, unemployment, ensuring people when they get old have a place to stay in, Social Security, these kind of lefty policies. It's like those lefty policies don't work well when you have to beg the rich for money who don't need those policies. That is our political system. And at one point, it seemed to deliver, and at some other point, it seemed to have stopped delivering. Is it just that they got much better? Is it just systems, all systems? There's no perfect system that goes on in perpetuity. That basically every point along the way, at some point, people get so accustomed to using a system that they get much better at the corruption within the context of that system. Whereas in the very beginning, people are feeling it out. There may be this ideological bend towards something because they just started it. But the further away you get from the ideological initial starting phase, the weaker that pull gets. So at first it was, well, yeah, of course the country matters more than party. And then at some point it changes to, party is the thing that matters more than anything else. And then you even get to my self-interest matters more than anything else. Is that what we're looking at? Just all systems ultimately decay.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I think you're right. I think that that America was an industrial powerhouse. It was
Right.
its rise to prominence after the Civil War was absolutely extraordinary. It actually started before the Civil War, but there was then it gained new steam after the Civil War, and its rise to prominence was just amazing. It was one of the most astonishing world events of the late 19th century. And American workers did benefit despite savage union busting, despite savage racism. Black people benefited too. I mean, the Great Migration to the northern cities meant that Black people got jobs in industry. They made decent wages despite all the things that were stacked against them. They made decent wages. They were progressing. They were doing well, actually, in terms of income growth and education and all these other things. And so American workers did benefit, but then essentially what we've seen since the mid 70s, early to mid 70s, is a slow collapse of that capitalist engine, and workers have suffered tremendously across the board, all categories, whites, blacks, Asians, men, women, etc.
Yeah.
Now you could argue as to which group got did worse, did better, etc. But the point is they all fell back. And so yeah, and the political system itself has been in disarray since the 1990s. I mean, nothing happens on Capitol Hill; it's completely frozen. There's just long-term trench warfare. The rule of the rich is absolutely brazen. I mean, remember this summer when they were when Joe Biden finally bowed out, and then Kamala became the got the anointment. The papers were full about Democratic mega donors.
She got $1 billion.
Yeah, but
in 3 months.
But it was the mega donors who were calling the shots. They were running the show.
Yeah, they got rid of them. They told Joe Biden, "You're not getting any money."
Yeah,
what you get? You have to bow out.
So,
I mean,
it was the rule of the rich.
I mean, but maybe that's the answer to it. Then you have a capitalistic system that is running in parallel to democratic system, and you create this kind of model where it's incentivized because they inherently they want to maximize their profit. And if I can maximize my profit by sending a job over to China, then I'm going to do that. I can pay that worker $3. I was paying an American $15. Then I can pay political campaigns to allow me to do that in order to get tariffs cut off when that product gets back into the United States. Meaning cash seems to be the thing that's working on two ends. On the political end, to allow certain things to take place and to get various people elected, but also on the other end, in order to maximize that profit, which undercuts the interests of America. So it's like policy propels this kind of globalism, whereas by the same token, that globalism undermines our own ability, to fund our industries, to pay people decent wages and those type of things. Is that what we're looking at? That it's not necessarily the political system in and of itself that fell apart. It was this kind of predatory capitalistic system that's running in parallel with that system that's corrupting the people in the context of the capitalist and democratic order.
Well, I think they're very closely related phenomena. The democratic system, such as it was, is falling apart, and its decay has allowed the naked rule of money and wealth. And the more democracy disintegrates, the more the Wall Street dictatorship, the capitalist dictatorship, whatever you want to call it, the more obvious it becomes, more obvious and undisguised. I mean, America barely qualifies as democratic. I mean, the electoral system is extremely limited. Only two parties are allowed to take part. You have monstrosities like the U.S. Senate, where where Lily White, Wyoming, has the same number of votes as
California.
minority California.
Yeah.
Do you know that 54% of the population lives in just 10 states that are outvoted 4-1 by the minority in the other 40? And 82% of racial minorities live in those top 10 states.
Really? That I didn't know.
That is,
well,
that is, I mean, that is structural racism.
80% of African Americans
No,
live in
all racial minorities.
All minorities live in 10 states.
Hispanics, Asians, Black people, American Indians. I mean,
so we're thinking California, New York, big state, basically some of the big states, especially in South Georgia, I would imagine, South Carolina. Wow.
Yeah, but they're outvoted 4-1 by the minority.
Yeah.
So so that is what's structural. That is structural racism, and it's devastating. But it's not, but it's devastating for white people too. This is a really important thing because white people need democracy. The working class does, irrespective of race, and they're not getting it. And so instead, they're getting the naked rule of the rich, and it's devastating. And with Trump, that rule is even more naked, if it's such a thing as possible, than it was before.
Is an American political system collapsing under itself? Meaning, is either the American empire or the American political system in general? Do you see it, like you say, you call it decaying? Is decaying not strong enough, especially given the selection? I mean, Joe Biden was out of his mind, and all of these people came up saying, no, he's great. He's awesome. Behind the scenes in those meetings, Joe Biden is just on it. Joe Biden couldn't even be prosecuted because they didn't say he was in his right mind. Like, that guy has his finger on the nuclear button. If that is not an allegory for this kind of decay, I don't know what is.
And when that prosecutor said that, every Democrat in Washington jumped down his throat and accused him of lying. Well,
it's like, how dare you say that about the president?
Precisely. And then came that first debate in July. And suddenly, two things were clear. One is that Joe Biden was absolutely incompetent. And the other was that every other Democrat was lying through his teeth or her teeth. So it was a gigantic cover-up, and Kamala Harris was in the thick of it. Yeah. And so she paid the price.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the prices.
American people don't like being lied to. They get upset, and when they get upset, they take it out in the polling booth.
Do you think she had a chance? I mean, Joanne Reed and some of these other Democrats are trying to act like, oh, she ran the best campaign she could run. People were just racist and sexist, and Hispanic men were just misogynistic, and Black folks weren't loyal, and blah, 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 blah. We were blameless and perfect. It was America that's the problem.
Yes, I think it is the job of wealthy white liberals to tell Black Americans how to vote. they obviously can't figure it out themselves. So they have got to rely on white limousine liberals to explain it for them. Yes, that's what I think the lesson of the election is.
Yeah, fair enough. I say white liberals to explain it for them. Let me ask you this. If you, and this could be the last question, we have about 2 or 3 minutes left. If you were on the campaign trail with Harris, and you had the ability to be Elon Musk, you were Harris's Elon Musk, like the way Elon Musk is Trump. What do you advise her to try to win that race?
I would advise her to get rid of the celebrities.
Well, she had Queen Latifah. Queen Latifah was there. Queen Latifah endorsed her, according to Joanne Reed.
I would get rid of I would have gotten rid of the celebrities. I would have, rolled.
And by the way, she paid $20 million for that. For Katy Perry, for Queen Latifah, for what's the other one? Like all of those musical acts.
Oprah charged $1 million.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the mind reels. But no, I would have gotten rid of all the celebrities. I would have rolled my sleeves up. I would have gone into the neighborhoods. I would have told people that, yeah, we've done a lot of things that were wrong. Yeah, we did the best we could, but yeah, we made serious mistakes. Yeah, we're listening to you. Inflation's a huge problem. These wars are out of control. We've got to somehow reestablish some kind of sanity in both the Ukraine and the Middle East. But she just couldn't do that for any number of reasons, one of which she was part of the mistakes when they were being made.
Agreed.
And the other thing is that she just doesn't have very much upstairs. I'm just sorry. I mean, she is not the sharpest tool in the shed. She just is unfamiliar with policy, not comfortable with policy, has very little political success. Unfortunately, she wound up, replicating the campaign she ran in 2019. She did so badly in the 2020 presidential primaries that she had to drop out in 2019.
Yeah.
And essentially, her performance was not much better.
Yeah, she didn't even make it to Iowa.
Yeah.
In those primaries, effectively ran out of money, which is somewhat ironic, considering in this case she owes $20 million after raising $1 billion. And I would imagine people are looking like, how did you spend $1 billion and lose? Donald Trump only raised $390 million. So they raised almost 3 times as much as Trump, and yet lost. Like, just astonishing. It's mind blowing. Like I said, the mind reels over that stuff. Daniel, man, I always enjoy talking to you, Daniel. Anytime you want to come on, you're more than welcome. Daniel Lazare, he's an independent journalist and author, best known as a critic of the U.S. Constitution, American politics, government, and social policy in general. He's written several books, including The Frozen Republic and America's Undeclared War. Daniel, man, thank you for this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, guys, I am going to take a quick break. I'm going to be back with Daniel McAdams, another Daniel, and we are going to talk about Donald Trump's picks, basically goblins, swamp monsters that he has filled his coffers with. We'll be back in a moment.